A paralyzed billionaire's son. A poor girl with a sunflower drawing, a secret buried for 6 years. Before we begin, like, subscribe and comment where you're from. What Emily found in the mud will change everything. Can innocence defeat evil? Let's find out. The morning Richard Calloway woke at 4 meant another night of fractured sleep. Another dawn spent surrounded by medical files that offered nothing but expensive confusion. He sat in his study, mahogany walls absorbing the amber light from his desk lamp, and rubbed his eyes until colors bloomed behind his lids. The clock's steady tick felt like accusation. 6 years, 6 years of specialists from 12 countries, 47 different opinions, $8 million vaporized into treatments that promised hope and delivered nothing. Outside his window, the Charleston sky was still bruised purple, the magnolias in the garden standing like silent witnesses to his failure. Richard's gaze drifted to the photo on his desk. Isabel, her chestnut hair catching sunlight, eyes that saw goodness everywhere, dead 7 years now, 2 weeks after giving birth to Lucas. Complications, Dr. Marcus Hale had said, his voice smooth as silk. Sometimes these things happen, Richard. No one's fault. Richard had believed him then. He believed less now, though he couldn't say why. The sound of wheels on marble pulled his attention. Through the window, he watched Rosa, the Filipino nurse, efficient and perpetually distant, push Lucas onto the terrace. The boy was 9 now, blonde curls inherited from Isabel's side. Brown eyes that used to spark with life. Now they were flat, polished stones reflecting nothing. Lucas didn't resist the routine. He simply endured it. That passive acceptance destroyed Richard more than any screaming fit could. He remembered Lucas at 3, running through these same gardens, laughing at butterflies. Then one morning, no fall, no accident, no warning. The boy's legs simply stopped obeying. Specialists had swarmed. Neurologists, orthopedists, infectious disease experts, they'd scanned, tested, biopsied, nothing. Idiopathic paralysis, they called it, a fancy term for we don't know. Richard's father, Theodore, never accepted that diagnosis. The old man spent his days in the greenhouse, talking to his rare Phalaenopsis orchids about mysteries that incompetent doctors refused to solve. Theodore kept a hidden notebook. Richard had seen it once, filled with timelines, dates, questions circled in red ink, but grief made people suspicious of shadows. Richard had dismissed it as an old man's need for answers in a world that offered none. The study door opened without knocking. Dr. Marcus Hale entered with the confidence of someone who'd been coming here for 8 years. 58, silver hair gelled back, Cartier glasses catching the light, expensive cologne announcing his arrival before his voice did. Richard, early morning again. Couldn't sleep. Richard gestured at the files, looking for something I missed. Marcus smiled, sympathetic, practiced. You've consulted the best minds in medicine. Sometimes we have to accept limitations. He adjusted his iPad. I'm here for Lucas's monthly evaluation, shall we? They found Lucas on the terrace, staring at nothing. Marcus performed his examination with theatrical efficiency, asking questions he already knew the answers to, making notes that meant nothing. Continue current protocol, he concluded, as he always did. Richard watched Marcus's hands, surgeon's hands, steady and precise. Those hands had delivered Lucas, had tried to save Isabel. Richard owed this man everything, yet sometimes in the space between sleep and waking, he wondered if debt and trust were the same thing. After Marcus left, Theodore appeared from the greenhouse, soil under his fingernails, suspicion in his eyes. That man's been treating Lucas for 6 years with 0 progress. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Medicine isn't always... I know what medicine is. I also know what incompetence looks like. Theodore softened. I hired someone to help with the gardens. She starts today. A widow with a young daughter, maybe. He trailed off, looking at Lucas through the window. Maybe what this house needs isn't another doctor. Maybe it needs life. At noon, Richard barely glanced up when Theodore brought Clara Harrison to the study. She stood in the doorway, thin, worn, but holding herself with quiet dignity. Her resume was humble. 3 previous domestic positions, high school education, widowed 4 years. I'm a hard worker, Mr. Calloway. Honest, I have a daughter to raise, and I promise I'll give my best. Something in her directness made Theodore approve her on the spot. Richard signed the paperwork without reading it, his mind already back on the medical files. He didn't see Theodore's small smile, didn't see the old man watching Clara leave, hope flickering in his chest for the first time in years. That evening, miles away in a rusted trailer, Clara returned to find her daughter Emily drawing with salvaged crayons. The 7-year-old had created a sunflower, petals disproportionate but vibrant. Underneath, in careful letters, "For the sad boy, we got the job, baby," Clara whispered, hugging her daughter. Emily looked up with eyes too old for 7. "Does he have kids?" "A boy your age, but he's sick." Emily studied her sunflower, then nodded with the absolute certainty only children possess. "I'm gonna make him smile." Clara pulled her close, breathing in the scent of cheap shampoo and hope. She didn't know that accepting this job had just set in motion events that would unearth a 6-year-old secret, one that had cost a life and nearly destroyed another. In his apartment across town, Marcus Hale poured expensive scotch and looked at his reflection. A successful man, respected, trusted. He thought about the little girl he'd glimpsed in the hallway today. All wild hair and curious eyes. Children asked questions. Children explored. Children found things. He drained his glass and reached for his phone. "Vivian," he said when she answered, "we may have a complication." Emily had never seen a place where the floors were softer than clouds. She stood in the service entrance of the Calloway mansion, hand tight in her mother's, and tried to memorize everything. The smell of beeswax and fresh flowers instead of diesel and mold. The way light poured through tall windows like liquid gold. The silence that felt full instead of empty. Clara received instructions from Mrs. Margaret, the outgoing head housekeeper, a Scottish woman with steel grey hair and no-nonsense efficiency. "Mr. Richard takes coffee at 7, lunch at 1, dinner at 7:30. Young Lucas eats in his room at 6. Keep your daughter quiet and out of sight." But Emily had never learned to be invisible while Clara vacuumed the library. Emily slipped through French doors into the garden. 6 acres of manicured perfection spread before her, marble fountains with weeping angels, pergolas draped in purple wisteria, roses that looked hand-painted. She touched a magnolia petal, velvet soft, nothing like the plastic flowers in the trailer, and pressed her face to lavender bushes, breathing until her head spun pleasantly. "Do you like plants?" Emily spun to find an old man with wild white hair and kind eyes behind reading glasses. He wore linen pants and a blue shirt, soil under his fingernails. "They're magic," Emily said seriously. "They make food from sunshine." Theodore Calloway laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in months. He led her to the greenhouse and showed her orchids with names she repeated perfectly. Phalaenopsis Aphrodite. "You're a smart little thing. My teacher says I got an exceptional memory." Emily traced a white petal carefully. "Are you the grandpa?" "I am, and you're Emily." "How'd you know?" "Your mother told me about the girl who draws sunflowers." He studied her, this scrawny child with scraped knees and eyes that noticed everything. "Would you like to help me water these?" They spent an hour together, Emily asking questions like a scientist. "Why is this one purple, but that one white?" Theodore answered each one seriously. Treating her like an equal, he felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been clenched tight since Isabel died. Meanwhile, Clara finished the library and realized with horror that Emily had disappeared. A panic clawed at her throat. Fired on the first day, back to the trailer, no food money. She ran through hallways calling her daughter's name. She found Emily in a bedroom on the 2nd floor, talking to a boy in a wheelchair. Lucas had been staring out the window, counting birds because it was something to do. When the door opened, a girl walked in, no knock, no hesitation, and announced, "Hi, you're the sad boy." Lucas turned. Startled. "I'm not sad, and you're not supposed to be here. My mom works here now." The girl held out a crumpled paper. "I made you this." Lucas took it reluctantly, a sunflower drawn in crayon, bright and messy. Why? 'Cause sunflowers always look at the sun. Even when it's cloudy, they know it's there, like hope. Lucas stared at this strange creature. Wild hair in crooked braids, a dress 2 sizes too big. Smile missing a front tooth, something in his chest moved just slightly, like ice cracking. Did you make that up? Nope. My mom said it when my dad died, so I drew sunflowers every day till I stopped being so sad. Your dad died. In an accident. He was building stuff and it fell on him. Emily said it matter-of-factly, but her eyes went distant. Do you like stories? I can tell really good ones. There's this dragon named Escamonson who guards stars. And he looks mean, but he's just lonely and... Emily! Clara appeared breathless and terrified. I'm so sorry, Mr. Lucas. She didn't mean to disturb. She wasn't disturbing me. Lucas spoke quietly. But everyone heard the weight in it. Can she come back tomorrow? Clara looked between her daughter and this pale boy who seemed suddenly less hollow. Before she could answer, Theodore appeared. Let the girl visit, Clara. God knows this house needs laughter. That evening, Lucas asked Rosa to tape the sunflower drawing to his wall. He stared at it before falling asleep, and for the first time in years, dreamed of something other than the day his legs stopped working. In the trailer, Emily curled against her mother on their thin mattress. The boy's really sad, Mama, but I'm gonna fix him. Clara stroked her daughter's hair. Baby, some things can't be fixed. That's what people said about our toaster, but I wiggled the wires and it worked. Emily yawned. People are just complicated toasters. Clara laughed despite everything. Outside, rain started to fall, but inside their cramped space, something felt different, lighter. Neither of them saw Vivian cross in her downtown apartment, scrolling through security camera footage on her tablet. She paused on the image of Emily entering Lucas's room, zoomed in on the girl's face. Vivian's perfectly manicured nail, crimson, always crimson, tapped the screen. She dialed Marcus. There's a child. Poor, curious, already attached to Lucas. Children are manageable. Marcus's voice was smooth, unconcerned. Are they? Vivian set down her wine glass, untouched. She'd been Richard's secretary for 10 years. In love with him for 9, she'd watched Isabel steal the life that should have been hers, had helped end that life, and waited patiently for Richard to finally see what was right in front of him. She wasn't waiting anymore. Just observe, Marcus said. If she becomes a problem, we'll handle it. After hanging up, Vivian stared at Richard's photo on her phone, taken at a charity event, him smiling at donors, her in the background, invisible as always. She'd memorized everything about him, how he took his coffee, which tie he'd choose based on mood, the way he whispered Isabel's name in his sleep during the business trips when she'd managed to be in adjacent hotel rooms. Love, she'd learned, was just obsession wearing a prettier mask. In the mansion, Richard stood at his study window, watching rain pummel the magnolias. He thought about the girl his father had mentioned, wild-haired, gap-toothed, apparently fearless. He thought about Lucas's face tonight at dinner, how it had held a flicker of something almost like happiness. Richard pressed his palm against the cold glass and whispered to his reflection, "Please let this be good. Please let something be good." But in Charleston's humid darkness, secrets stirred in the soil like dormant seeds, and all seeds eventually sprouted, whether you wanted them to or not. 3 weeks transformed the Calloway mansion from mausoleum to something almost resembling home. Emily's routine became sacred. School until 3:15, bus with Clara at 3:45, arrival at 4:30. Straight to the garden where Lucas waited. They'd claimed 50 square meters in the southeast corner, under 3 ancient magnolias that formed a natural canopy. Theodore had helped them outline it with white stakes. Just symbolic, he'd said with a wink, and planted extra flowers. Zinnias, cosmos, nasturtiums. Emily crowned Lucas with a daisy chain during an elaborate ceremony she'd invented. I name you Prince Lucas of the Kingdom of Lunaris. She dubbed herself Ambassador of the Ground. Sworn to carry messages between earth and sky, Lucas drew everything she described. His bedroom filled with sketches, Escamundson the three-headed dragon, the Cloud Princess, the Knights of Dew. For the first time since he was 3, he felt something other than emptied out. On a Tuesday afternoon, Emily taught Lucas to make friendship bracelets, using techniques she'd learned from YouTube on Clara's ancient phone. His fingers were clumsy, unused to fine motor tasks after years of disuse, but he persisted. When she tied green and yellow threads around his wrist, she announced solemnly, "Now you're officially a member of the Order of Sunflowers." What's the order do? We notice when people are sad and try to help. And we never give up on each other, ever. She held out her pinky. Promise. Lucas hooked his pinky with hers, this tiny gesture that felt massive. Promise. Theodore watched from the greenhouse, hands pausing in their work with a rare orchid. He'd seen his grandson smile more in 3 weeks than in 6 years. That night, he showed Richard the notebook he kept hidden, the one full of questions about Isabel's death. Lucas's sudden paralysis, the suspicious coincidences. Look at the timeline, son. Marcus was there for every critical moment. Doesn't that strike you as convenient? Richard's voice was sharp with exhaustion. Or maybe just thorough medical care, Dad. I know you need someone to blame, but Marcus has been nothing but... I hired an investigator. Theodore said it quietly. Richard went still. You did what? Someone to look into Marcus's background. Finances, just checking. That's paranoid. And your wife died mysteriously. Your son lost the use of his legs mysteriously. I'm old, Richard, not stupid. Something is wrong here. Theodore gripped his son's shoulder. And that little girl out there, she's brought light back to this house. I won't let whatever darkness took Isabel and hurt Lucas touch her too. Richard wanted to argue, but found he couldn't, because late at night in the space between consciousness and dreams, he wondered the same things. He'd never questioned Marcus. The man had been there through everything, steady and professional and impossibly competent. But competence and compassion weren't the same as honesty. What's the investigator found? Financial irregularities. Marcus declared $180,000 in income the year Isabel died, but bought a $90,000 car cash and a $400,000 condo without financing. Money doesn't add up. Theodore closed the notebook. I'm not accusing him of anything yet, but I'm also not pretending everything's normal. That same evening, Marcus visited for Lucas's bi-weekly evaluation. He noted improvements in the boy's facial muscle tone, better posture, signs of emotional engagement affecting physicality. It bothered him more than he'd admit. Lucas is showing remarkable emotional progress, Marcus told Richard afterward, choosing words carefully. Of course, we need to monitor for unhealthy emotional dependency on external figures. Children in isolation sometimes form intense bonds with novel presences. If that presence were to suddenly leave, you think Emily's bad for him. Not bad. Just potentially destabilizing if the situation changes. Marcus smiled his professional smile. Nothing to worry about now, just something to keep in mind. Second seed planted. Richard began watching Emily and Clara differently after that, noticing things he hadn't before. Clara's hands near valuable objects during cleaning, the way Emily had free run of the house. Theodore's paranoia felt suddenly less paranoid. Across town, in a cafe 15 miles outside Charleston, Marcus met Vivian. She arrived late, lipstick perfect, tension vibrating off her in waves. The girl is becoming a problem, Vivian said without preamble. She's 7. She's changing everything. Richard looks at her like she's... Vivian's voice cracked, like she's Isabel reincarnated, that maternal, tender way he never looked at me. Vivian, Marcus's voice hardened. Emotion makes mistakes. We've come too far to... Then we need to create distance between Clara and the family. Her crimson nails drummed the table. Something subtle. Plant doubt. We've done it before. Marcus thought about 6 years ago. about the slow drip of anticoagulants and muscle relaxants, about watching Isabel deteriorate while Richard held her hand, never suspecting, about Lucas's nervous system damaged just enough to paralyze without killing. Clean work, untraceable. But Emily complicated things. Children asked questions adults didn't. Children explored places they shouldn't. "I'll handle it," he said finally. "But we move carefully." After Vivian left, Marcus ordered scotch and considered the problem. Clara was vulnerable, poor, no connections, no legal protection. A small accusation, well placed, could destroy her. And if Clara left, Emily went too. Simple, clean, necessary. That night, Emily woke, screaming from a nightmare for the 5th consecutive time. Clara rushed in to find her daughter soaked with sweat, shaking. "Mama, I dreamed Lucas was falling into a dark hole and I couldn't reach him. And there was a lady in white laughing, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was..." Emily searched for words her 7-year-old vocabulary didn't contain. Broken, everything felt broken. Clara held her tight. "Just a bad dream, baby." But Emily's eyes, too old, too knowing, found her mother's, "Something bad's gonna happen, I feel it." "Nothing bad's happening, we're safe here." Emily wanted to believe her. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the dream's residue clung like cobwebs. In it, the woman in white had been holding something metal that caught light. A key, a box. Emily couldn't remember, but her hands tingled like they did before thunderstorms. And she'd learned to trust that feeling in the mansion's east wing. Richard couldn't sleep either. He'd pulled Isabel's medical files, reading them for the 1,000th time. Normal pregnancy complications, Marcus's notes said, escalating nausea, preeclampsia concerns, everything textbook. So why did it feel like reading fiction? He picked up the phone, put it down, picked it up again, dialed Theodore. "I want the investigator to look deeper," Richard said when his father answered, "into everything. Isabel's death, Lucas's condition, all of it. It's about time," Theodore replied, relief and vindication mixing in his voice. Neither of them knew they'd just started a timer, one that would explode in exactly 3 weeks, destroying some lives and saving others. In the garden, under moonlight that turned magnolia petals to silver, the kingdom of Lunaris slept, but beneath the old ivy-covered wall on the property's northern edge, something waited in the soil. A metal box. 6 years buried, secrets rusted shut, waiting for rain to wash away earth, waiting for curious hands, waiting for Emily. Spring arrived early, aggressive, turning the Callaway Gardens into an explosion of life. Emily turned 8 on March 19th, and for the first time in her life, her birthday felt like the holidays she'd seen on television, full and bright and impossibly kind. They celebrated in the garden. Under magnolias dropping petals like perfumed snow, Clara had made a 3-layer chocolate cake using her grandmother's recipe, and Richard had surprised everyone by actually showing up, trading his perpetual suit for jeans and a polo shirt. Emily barely recognized him without the armor of formality. "Make a wish," Lucas said as Emily leaned over 8 candles. She closed her eyes, let Lucas walk again, and blew them out in one breath. Then Richard appeared with something large, covered in a white sheet. And Emily's heart stopped when he pulled the sheet away, revealing a pink Schwinn bicycle with white basket and streamers. She went absolutely silent. Lucas worried she didn't like it until he saw tears streaming down her face. "It's new," she whispered, touching the handlebars like they might dissolve. "Nobody used it before me." "All yours," Richard said, throat tight. Emily launched herself at him, nearly knocking him over. Clara cried behind her hand. Theodore cleaned his glasses that had mysteriously fogged. Even Rosa smiled, rare as a blue moon. Only 2 people at the edges of celebration wore masks. Marcus, present for Lucas's regular checkup, watched with clinical detachment, and Vivian, viewing photos later that an oblivious housemaid posted online, felt something crack inside her chest, like stressed ice. She called Marcus that night. "We're done waiting. Vivian, 6 years I've waited for him to see me. Now he's treating that poverty like family. I won't wait anymore. Marcus heard desperation in her voice, the dangerous kind that made people careless. He'd worked with Vivian for 6 years, had trusted her to stay cold and logical. But love, even poisoned love, made people combustible. Fine, he said, we accelerate. They met the next evening in a 24-hour supermarket parking lot. Marcus had already paid Hank, the new gardener, an ex-con with gambling debts Marcus knew too well, $2,000 to plant items in Clara's cottage over the next 2 weeks. Small things, Richard's Mont Blanc pen worth $800, a silk scarf that had belonged to Isabel, silver earrings from a jewelry box. Only Vivian accessed. Simultaneously, Vivian had created a false email trail suggesting Clara had a history of theft. She'd hacked old accounts, backdated messages, built a story so convincing even she half believed it. Theodore received the first anonymous call 3 days after Emily's birthday. The voice, digitally distorted, claimed concerns about the new housekeeper. It gave him names: Morrison family in Mount Pleasant, Delacroix family in Somerville, Clara's alleged previous employers. Theodore's investigator found the planted emails. We noticed some small items missing during Clara's employment. We didn't press charges because she had a young daughter, but we wouldn't recommend her. Theodore's heart sank. He showed Richard, who read the messages 3 times. Wanting to find errors and finding none. There has to be a mistake, Richard said. I want to believe that too, but we have to be responsible. Lucas is vulnerable. Richard began watching Clara, noticing her hands near his desk during cleaning, seeing her rearrange objects innocently, he told himself. But doubt was an infection. Once introduced, it colored everything. Emily and Lucas, oblivious to the conspiracy tightening around them, spent an afternoon creating what Emily called the official constitution of Lunaris. They sat under the oldest magnolia, 300 years old, trunk so wide 3 adults couldn't encircle it, and made their pact, friends forever, no matter what, Emily recited. Pinky extended, by sunlight and moonlight, by the kingdom of Lunaris and all the stars above. Even when the world says no, we say yes, Lucas added, hooking his pinky with hers. They sealed it with a kiss on top of the head, Emily on tiptoes, Lucas bending forward, innocent as breathing, pure as morning. Theodore watched from the library window and felt his eyes sting. But when he looked down at the investigator's report on his desk, at the fake emails about Clara, tension squeezed his chest until he coughed. His old heart knew what his mind resisted. Storms were coming. That night, Emily woke screaming again. Same nightmare, worse details. Lucas falling into a pit of black earth, walls breathing like lungs. A smell like rot, whispers in a voice she didn't recognize. Truth buried, truth forgotten, truth that kills and saves. The woman in white at the bottom now reached out her hand, palm open, holding something that caught light. But Emily always woke before seeing what. Mama, what if the dreams are trying to tell me something? Clara, exhausted, frightened by her daughter's certainty, could only hold her. It's just anxiety, baby. New place, new people. But Emily remembered Lucas mentioning his mother once, how he dreamed of her in white, trying to tell him something he could never quite hear. And Emily wondered if the dead spoke in frequencies only children could receive. 2 weeks after Emily's birthday, Richard found his grandfather's silver paperweight missing from his desk. Vivian discovered it wrapped in a dish towel in the laundry closet, right where Hank had planted it. Richard held the object with trembling hands and looked at his father. Theodore's face was grave. Could be innocent. Clara might have moved it while cleaning, but the seed had germinated, roots were spreading. That evening, Richard confronted Clara in the kitchen. His voice was controlled, but cold. The voice of a man trying to be fair while suspecting betrayal. This paperweight was found in the laundry. Did you move it? Clara went pale. Sir, I never touch personal items. I only clean around them. That's standard protocol. You're sure? Because it was wrapped up, not just moved. The implication hit Clara like a slap. Mr. Calloway, I swear I didn't touch that. But Richard heard the defensiveness, and confirmation bias did its quiet work. The innocent sounded guilty. The guilty sounded professional. After Clara left, Richard stood alone, holding the paperweight, sterling silver, inherited from his grandfather, worth maybe $200, but priceless in memory. He thought about Isabel, about how she'd always believed the best in people, even when evidence suggested otherwise. "What would you do?" he asked her ghost. Her ghost, predictably, didn't answer, in 3 separate locations. 3 people smiled in the darkness. Marcus pouring expensive scotch, satisfied, Vivian staring at Richard's photo, possessive hunger in her eyes, Hank counting cash, moral flexibility paying literal dividends. Only in the cottage did Clara cry silently while Emily slept against her shoulder, tears wetting her daughter's hair. She felt the shape of future loss already, could taste it like copper in Emily's dreams. The woman in white finally opened her palm completely. The object catching light was a locket, and inside the locket, visible just before Emily woke, gasping, a photograph and words in desperate handwriting. "Please help me." Emily shot upright, heart hammering. But as consciousness returned, the details slipped away like water through fingers. She was left only with certainty. Something buried wanted to be found. And time was running out. The bomb detonated on a Tuesday in April, under rain so heavy it felt biblical. Richard received the call at 2:30. Charleston Police Department. They'd recovered jewelry belonging to his late wife, Isabel's pearl necklace. Diamond earrings, a family brooch. From a downtown pawn shop, the owner had identified Clara Harrison from a photograph, said she'd sold the pieces 3 weeks ago. It was a lie. Marcus had stolen the jewelry using codes Vivian provided, had paid the pawn shop owner $5,000 to memorize his story. But the evidence was perfect, airtight, devastating. Richard confronted Clara in the kitchen, rain hammering the windows like accusation. "How could you?" His voice broke on the words. "Isabel's jewelry, the only things I had left of her." Clara's face drained of color until she looked translucent. "Mr. Calloway, I swear to God, I never touched anything of yours. The police have proof. The man at the shop identified you. Then he's lying. Someone's setting me up." Theodore entered, holding Emily back as the girl tried to run to her mother. "Clara, it's best if you and Emily leave today." "No!" Emily screamed, tears streaming. "My mom didn't do anything. She doesn't steal. She's good." Lucas appeared in his wheelchair, pushed by Vivian, who timed her arrival perfectly. Her face was carefully concerned, voice dripping false sympathy. "Oh, Lucas, you shouldn't see this." "Dad, wait!" Lucas's voice cracked. "There has to be a mistake." "Lucas, go to your room." "But Dad, now!" Richard's shout echoed off marble and mahogany, silencing the entire mansion. Lucas began to cry. Not the silent tears of chronic grief, but broken sobs that sounded like something being torn. Emily wailed in Theodore's arms. Clara stood frozen, destroyed by accusation she couldn't defend against because innocence has no evidence, only the absence of guilt. "You have 1 hour to pack," Richard said, turning his back. "If you try to come back, I'm calling the police." In the hour that followed, the mansion transformed into catastrophe. Clara threw their few belongings into garbage bags. They'd never properly unpacked. Some superstitious part of her knowing this was temporary. Emily couldn't stop shaking, her whole body vibrating like a struck tuning fork. She tried one last time, ran to Lucas's room, pounded on the door. "Lucas, please talk to me. We didn't do anything." Inside, Lucas sat frozen, Vivian's poison in his ears. "You see, poor people sometimes pretend friendship just to steal. Your father's protecting you." "Shut up," Lucas whispered. "Excuse me, I said shut up." He shoved his wheelchair away from her. "Emily isn't like that. You don't know her." But doubt had wormed in. What if it was true? What if everything had been manipulation? Lucas was 9 years old and had trusted one person completely. And now the adults were saying that trust was misplaced. So when Emily begged through the door, when she whispered, "You promised. Remember friends forever," Lucas said nothing, and that silence destroyed her more completely than any accusation. Clara and Emily were expelled into rain that felt like punishment. No car, no money for a taxi. Just 2 garbage bags of belongings and each other. They walked 7 blocks to a bus stop, soaked through, Emily sobbing so hard she vomited twice, back at the trailer, roof leaking, walls weeping condensation. Smell of mildew and defeat. Clara sat on the stained mattress and felt her faith crack. For the first time since her husband died, she questioned if God existed at all. If he did, he was cruel. Emily didn't speak for 3 days. Just held the magic seashell Lucas had given her and cried, the kingdom of Lunaris was gone. Her best friend was gone, and nobody believed the truth. At the mansion, Lucas stopped eating, stopped drawing. The light Emily had brought flickered out like a candle in a draught, and he became again the hollow child of before. Maybe worse, because now he knew what he'd lost. Richard watched the garden where Emily and Lucas used to play, now empty except for rain and wind-torn petals, and felt something was terribly, catastrophically wrong. The rightness of his anger was already curdling into doubt. Theodore found him there at midnight. You made a mistake. Dad, the evidence. Damn the evidence. Theodore slammed his cane against marble. That little girl loved Lucas with a pure heart, and you threw her away like garbage. Richard had no answer. Because deep down, below the pain and rage and protective instinct, a small voice whispered, you missed something, something important. In her apartment, Vivian poured wine and waited for Richard to call. To need her, to finally see her. The call never came. She drank alone, victory tasting like ash. Marcus slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The threat was neutralized. The secret stayed buried. But neither of them saw Theodore making a phone call to his investigator. Dig deeper, into everything, Marcus, Vivian, the jewelry. I want to know who's lying and how they're doing it. Neither of them knew Emily had developed insomnia, that she spent nights staring out the trailer's broken window at the moon. Neither of them suspected that 3 weeks from now, a storm would wash away Earth, curious hands would dig, and a metal box buried for 6 years would finally see light. The truth was coming, and the truth was a reckoning. The trailer's roof leaked in 17 places. Emily had counted them during the first sleepless night, watching rain drip into strategically placed pots and pans. Each drip was a metronome, counting seconds of her new life. Abandoned, accused, alone. Clara stopped going to church. The priest, Father Thomas, visited once, and Clara wouldn't open the door. If God wanted to help, he would have, she said through thin metal. Emily heard her mother cry when the priest left, broken sounds that made Emily press her palms over her ears. Emily herself became a ghost, ate when forced. Attended school but didn't speak. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, called Clara in for a conference. Emily's not participating. She seems traumatized. What happened? We lost our home, Clara said, which was true enough. Back at the Calloway mansion, Lucas deteriorated. He refused physical therapy, screamed when Rosa tried to feed him, spent hours staring at the sunflower drawing on his wall. Richard hired a child psychologist who diagnosed severe depression with possible attachment disorder, the sudden severing of a primary bond, Dr. Reeves explained, especially for a child already experiencing trauma. It's psychologically devastating. Richard listened and felt his certainty crumble. He'd thought he was protecting his son. Instead, he'd destroyed him. Theodore worked in the shadows. His investigator, Malone, was a patient man who believed paper trails never lied. He traced the jewelry from the Calloway safe to the pawn shop and found a discrepancy. The shop's security footage showed a man in a medical coat, face obscured by a surgical mask, conducting the transaction. Not Clara. Who the hell was it then? Richard demanded, working on it. But whoever did this knew the system. Knew how to avoid cameras, knew Clara's schedule. Malone paused. This was professional, Mr. Calloway. This was a setup. The second piece fell into place when Malone examined the reference emails that had condemned Clara. The metadata didn't match. The Morrison family claimed they'd never sent such an email. Their account had been hacked 4 months ago. Someone went to elaborate lengths to destroy this woman's reputation, Malone concluded. Question is, why? What threat did a poor housekeeper and her daughter pose? Richard felt sick. If Clara was innocent, if Emily was innocent, then he'd committed an act of cruelty so profound it might be irreparable. But more than that, if they were innocent, then someone in his circle was guilty of something much worse than theft. Marcus noticed Richard's changed demeanor during their next appointment. "You seem distracted." "I made a mistake." "About Clara?" Marcus's fingers, preparing a syringe of vitamin B complex for Lucas, paused for a microsecond. "Oh, evidence suggests she was framed." Richard watched Marcus carefully, newly suspicious. "I'm trying to figure out by whom." "Well," Marcus smiled his professional smile, "people do desperate things. I hope you find answers." After he left, Richard stood in Lucas's room and studied the sunflower drawing. Emily had drawn it with crayons, childish and imperfect and achingly sincere. "You're Prince Lucas of the Kingdom of Lunaris," she'd said during that elaborate ceremony, "and I'm ambassador of the ground." Richard took out his phone and called Theodore. "I need to find them, Clara and Emily. I need to make this right." "That," Theodore said with grim satisfaction, "is the smartest thing you've said in weeks." But finding them proved harder than expected. Clara had no cell phone, no credit cards, no digital footprint. The trailer park had no rental agreement on file. She and Emily had become invisible, not through choice, but through poverty. Meanwhile, 3 miles away in that leaking trailer, Emily woke at 3 a.m. from another nightmare. This one was different. The woman in white wasn't at the bottom of a pit, but standing beside Emily's mattress. Translucent as mist, pointing toward the window, Emily, half asleep and believing, looked where the woman pointed, through rain and darkness. She saw something, a flash of light that didn't match lightning. Something reflective in the overgrown lot next to the trailer park. Morning came grey and cold. Clara slept fitfully. Emily dressed silently and slipped outside, into mud and weeds that came to her waist. She'd seen the light near an old concrete foundation, what might have once been a house before the land was abandoned. There, between roots of a dead oak, something metal caught weak sunlight. Emily knelt and dug with bare hands. Mud under her fingernails, rain-softened earth giving way easily. Her fingers hit something solid. She pulled, and a metal box emerged. Rusted, locked, maybe a foot square. The lock was old, corroded. Emily smashed it with a rock until it broke. Inside, letters, dozens of them, in elegant handwriting on expensive stationery. Emily couldn't read the cursive well, but she recognized 2 words repeated over and over. "Help me." She grabbed the box and ran, barefoot and mud-covered, back to the trailer. "Mama, Mama, wake up! I found something." Clara, exhausted and depressed, wanted to dismiss it, but when she opened the first letter and read the signature, Isabel Calloway, her blood went cold. The letters were dated from March to August 2017, Isabel's last months. They started innocuous, notes to herself, reminders about nursery decorations, baby names. But as pregnancy progressed, the tone shifted. "Feeling so weak, Marcus says it's normal, but nothing feels normal. Nausea won't stop. Lost 12 pounds. Can't keep anything down." Richard is terrified, but Marcus keeps saying it's within normal parameters. "My legs tingle constantly." Asked Marcus about it. He said, "Pregnancy hormones, but it doesn't feel like hormones. It feels like something is wrong with my body." I don't trust Vivian, the way she looks at Richard, the way she watches me, and then the last letter dated 2 days before Isabel died. I think Marcus is poisoning me. I know how insane that sounds, but I feel it. The IVs make me worse, not better. Vivian keeps bringing him into my room when Richard isn't there. They whisper. I pretend to sleep and listen. I heard Marcus say 2 more weeks, and Vivian ask, "What about the baby?" And Marcus say, "Acceptable casualties. I'm writing this and hiding it because if something happens to me, if I don't survive this, Richard needs to know. Please God, let someone find this. Please help my baby, my sweet innocent baby, who didn't ask to be born into this nightmare. Marcus and Vivian. They're killing me, And nobody believes me because they've been so careful, so professional, so concerned. But I know. Clara read it twice, hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. Then she looked at Emily, this fierce, small girl covered in mud, who'd somehow found the one piece of evidence that changed everything. "Baby," Clara whispered, "you just solved a murder." Emily's eyes were huge. "The lady in white," she kept pointing. "In my dreams, she was showing me. We have to go to the police." "No," Emily's voice was firm. "We have to go to Lucas's grandpa. He'll believe us, and then he'll make everything right." So Clara wrapped the letters carefully, washed Emily's face and hands, and they walked, because they had no other option, 7 miles to the Calloway mansion. Emily's feet blistered, Clara's legs cramped, but they walked because truth had weight, and that weight demanded delivery. They arrived at noon, muddy and exhausted. The gate was locked, but Emily scaled it with the fearlessness only children possess. Theodore saw them from his greenhouse and came running, as much as a 71-year-old man could run. "Emily, Clara, what?" "We found proof," Emily said, holding out the box. "Proof that my mom didn't steal anything. And proof about who killed Lucas's mom." Theodore took the box, with trembling hands, read the letters, and felt 6 years of suspicion crystallize into certainty. "Richard," he bellowed, "Richard, get out here now!" What followed happened quickly. Richard reading the letters, face draining of color, Theodore calling Malone the investigator, Malone calling police contacts. Within 2 hours, detectives were in the study examining evidence. Within 4 hours, they'd matched handwriting, verified paper authenticity, pulled medical records. Isabel's body was exhumed. Toxicology testing, more advanced than 6 years ago, found traces of warfarin and pancuronium. Slow poisons, accumulating damage disguised as pregnancy complications. Lucas's blood was tested too. Same poisons at sublethal levels administered during infancy, causing neurological damage that mimicked idiopathic paralysis. The investigators came for Marcus at his clinic. He saw them through the window and knew immediately he'd wondered sometimes how it would end. Never imagined a 7-year-old would be his undoing. Vivian they found at the office, organizing Richard's calendar like always. She actually ran, when she saw police, making it 3 blocks before they caught her. In the interrogation room, Marcus broke first. Not because of guilt, he still didn't feel guilty, but because Vivian, in her panic, had already blamed him entirely. Survival instinct trumped loyalty. "Isabel was dying anyway," he said calmly, like discussing a medical case. "The preeclampsia would have killed her. I simply accelerated the inevitable, spared her prolonged suffering. And the baby. Collateral damage, regrettable but not intentional. The dosages were calculated for an adult. I didn't account for transplacental transfer affecting the fetus so severely. You paralyzed a child. I made an error in calculation." Marcus adjusted his glasses. Pointless now, but habits died hard. "In my defense, the child survived, could have been much worse." The detective stared at him, struggling to comprehend such clinical detachment. "Why?" Marcus shrugged. "Richard Calloway had everything I'd earned through hard work and superior intelligence. I wanted him to hurt." Vivian's confession was messier, soaked in tears and delusion. "I loved him. I loved Richard so much. Isabel was in the way. She had what should have been mine. I was helping, don't you see? Helping him be free to be with you." Yes, finally, yes. She looked at the detective with desperate eyes. He would have seen eventually without her, without the burden of her and the broken child. He would have seen me. "So you helped murder her and frame an innocent woman." Vivian's face crumpled. "Clara was nobody, just poor, expendable nobody. We were doing important things. You were monsters," the detective said quietly. The trials came fast. Media frenzy, public outrage, justice delayed but finally arriving. Marcus received 25 years without parole. Vivian got 15 as an accomplice, but those numbers meant nothing to Lucas, who sat in his wheelchair listening to Richard explain what had happened. how Emily's nightmares and persistence had uncovered his mother's murder. "She saved us," Richard said, throat tight. "That little girl saved us." Lucas looked at the sunflower drawing, still taped to his wall after months. "Where is she now? Would you like to see her?" Lucas nodded, unable to speak. They found Emily and Clara in the trailer, packing the few belongings worth saving. Richard knocked on the thin metal door, and when Clara opened it, he fell to his knees in mud. "Forgive me," his voice broke. "I destroyed you both. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway." Clara looked at Emily. Her daughter's face was solemn, older than 8, marked by the crash course in human cruelty she'd received. Emily nodded. "Get up, Mr. Calloway." Clara helped him stand. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is making them right." "Lucas wants to see you," Richard said to Emily. "If you'll come." Emily's answer was to run past him, down the trailer steps, toward the Calloway car, idling at the curb. Richard and Clara followed, something unspoken but understood passing between them. Adults had failed these children. Now the adults had to rebuild what they'd broken. At the mansion, Theodore had prepared the garden. He'd replanted the kingdom of Lunaris, hanging fresh flower garlands from the magnolias. Lucas waited in his wheelchair, terrified Emily would hate him for his silence. For not believing, she appeared through the French doors and stopped. They stared at each other across 20 feet of manicured lawn. Two children who'd been torn apart by adult evil and adult weakness. Then Lucas did something he hadn't managed in 6 years, using every ounce of strength. Fueled by desperate need, he pushed against the wheelchair arms and tried to stand. His legs shook. Muscles unused for so long screamed in protest. Dr. Grace Miller, a new doctor, a brilliant toxicologist who'd taken Lucas's case after Marcus's arrest, had said it might be possible. The poisoning had caused neurological disruption, not destruction, with correct treatment, with intensive therapy. Lucas might walk again, but nobody expected it now. Today, Lucas took one step. His right leg trembled but held. Then his left. Each movement was agony and triumph combined. Emily stood frozen, hands over her mouth, tears streaming. 3 steps, 4. Lucas fell forward, and Emily ran, catching him before he hit the ground. They collapsed together onto grass, Lucas gasping and crying and laughing all at once. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." "It's okay." Emily held him tight. "Friends forever. Remember, real friends forgive." Theodore watched from the terrace, openly weeping. Richard stood beside him, one hand gripping his father's shoulder, the other covering his own mouth to muffle sobs. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, gratitude and relief and residual fear, all battling for dominance. "Look what that little girl did," Theodore whispered. "She saved us. All of us." Richard nodded, unable to speak. The days that followed were a blur of doctor appointments and legal proceedings and slow, painful healing. Dr. Miller designed an intensive physical therapy regimen for Lucas. The poisoning had damaged his neuromuscular junctions, but not irreversibly. With proper medication and therapy, he would walk. It would take months, maybe years, but he would walk. Richard sat Lucas down in the study, the same study where he'd once signed paperwork without looking, where he'd made the decision that nearly destroyed everything. "I'm adopting Emily," Richard said. "If Clara agrees, if you agree." Lucas's eyes widened. "Really? She's family. Always has been. I was just too blind to see it." Richard paused. "And I'm setting up a college fund, full ride to wherever she wants to go, and renovating the cottage, really renovating it the way it should be." "Dad." Lucas's voice was quiet. "Yeah. Can I tell you something? Anything. I think I love Emily. Not like, I don't know what kind yet, but I know she's the most important person in my world, and I think maybe she always will be." Richard pulled his son into an embrace. "Then we protect her. Forever, whatever that means." Clara accepted Richard's offer. Not the money, not initially, though he insisted and she finally relented, but the safety, the belonging. The cottage became truly theirs. New appliances, repaired roof, furniture chosen by Clara herself. Emily got the lavender room she'd painted, books on her shelves, clothes that fit. The first night in their renovated home, Emily couldn't sleep. Too soft, too quiet, too safe. She crept to her window and looked out at the mansion, where Lucas's bedroom light still glowed. He was looking back. She somehow knew, and in that moment, both children made the same silent vow. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The kingdom of Lunaris wasn't just imaginary anymore. It was real. It was them. In prison, Marcus received his first letter from Richard. He opened it expecting vitriol. Instead, he found one sentence: "Thank you for teaching me what monsters look like, so I can make sure my son never becomes one." Marcus crumpled the letter and felt, for the first time in his life, the distant echo of something that might be shame. Vivian received no letters. She'd been forgotten entirely, which was perhaps the cruelest punishment for someone who'd spent 10 years desperate to be seen. Theodore added a final entry to his investigation notebook. Truth buried always surfaces, the innocent always vindicated, the guilty always caught. These are not fantasies. They're promises written in the architecture of justice. Emily and Lucas proved that. 2 children against the world's worst cruelty, and love won. Love always wins, if you're patient enough to let it. He closed the book and locked it in his desk drawer. Someday, he'd give it to Lucas. A reminder that vigilance matters, that questions matter, that one person refusing to accept convenient lies can change everything. But for now, there was lunch to share, a garden to tend, and 2 children laughing in the kingdom of Lunaris while magnolia petals fell like blessing. The nightmare was over. The healing had begun. 5 years slipped past like water. Emily turned 13, all sharp angles and fierce intelligence, accepted into Charleston's best private school on full scholarship. Lucas turned 14, walking without assistance now, though he still had bad days when his legs cramped and reminded him of poison and paralysis. They were inseparable, not romantically, not yet, though everyone saw it coming like distant thunder, but bonded in that soul-deep way of people who'd survived catastrophe together. They studied at the same library table, ate lunch under the same magnolia, finished each other's sentences without thinking. Richard married Clara 3 years after the trials. It happened quietly in the garden, with only Theodore, Emily, Lucas, and Father Thomas present. They'd fallen in love slowly, 2 broken people finding unexpected wholeness in shared second chances. Emily was flower girl, Lucas ring bearer, and both children cried harder than the bride. Theodore got frailer, but sharper. White hair wilder, eyes missing nothing. He spent mornings with his orchids and afternoons playing chess with Emily, who beat him with increasing frequency. "You're too smart for your own good," he'd grumble, after she checkmated him in 12 moves. "Blame my teachers," Emily would reply, grinning. On Emily's 13th birthday, Richard did something that still made her cry 3 years later. He officially adopted her, not replacing her father. Never that, but giving her his name legally. Emily Calloway Harrison, belonging to both halves of her story. Lucas was there for the courthouse ceremony, standing without his wheelchair now, hand tight in Emily's as the judge made it official. "You're my sister now," Lucas said afterward, testing the word. "Does that feel weird since we—" Emily trailed off, blushing. "Since we— what?" "Never mind." But Lucas knew, everyone knew, the way they looked at each other had shifted. Still innocent, but acquiring weight, implication, future tense. Theodore had laughed when Richard worried about it. "They'll figure it out in their own time. Stop hovering." High school arrived. Lucas, now walking confidently despite the residual tremor in his left leg, had grown tall and lean. His mother's eyes and his father's quiet intensity. He played piano, found he was talented, found it soothed something in him that words couldn't reach. Emily was all fire and motion, debate team captain, environmental club president, straight A's that she earned through ferocious study. They still spent evenings in the kingdom of Lunaris, though they were too old now for invented games. Instead, They talked about everything: college, future, fear, hope. Lucas wanted to study medicine, not to become his doctors, but to be the one who actually healed. Emily wanted marine biology, drawn to the ocean's mysteries the way she'd been drawn to the mystery that saved them. "You'll save the whales," Lucas teased. "Someone has to. Humans are terrible." "Not all humans." Emily looked at him, this boy who'd been her first real friend, who'd failed her once and spent years making amends, who'd literally learned to walk again, partly because he couldn't stand being unable to follow her. No, not all humans. The 6th anniversary of Isabel's exhumation and reburial arrived. The family visited her grave. Richard, Clara, Theodore, Lucas, Emily. They brought peonies, Isabel's favorite, and stood in silence while Charleston whined, rattled live oak leaves overhead. "She'd be proud of you," Richard told Lucas. "Of both of you." Lucas placed his flowers. "Sometimes I dream about her. She's always smiling, like she knows everything turned out okay." Emily touched the headstone, marble, engraved with beloved wife and mother. Truth will prevail, and felt the familiar tingle in her hands, not a nightmare feeling this time, more like recognition, like Isabel saying thank you. "She helped me find the box," Emily said suddenly. "In my dreams, when I was little, she kept pointing. I thought I was making it up, but I don't think I was." Nobody dismissed it. They'd all learned that some truths were too strange to be anything but real. Vivian was released after serving 8 years with good behavior. She moved to another state, changed her name, and never contacted the Callaways. Marcus remained in prison, model inmate, teaching other prisoners to read. He'd written Richard one more letter, a real apology this time, not self-justification. Richard had read it and filed it away, uninterested in Marcus's redemption arc. Some forgivenesses were beyond him. On Lucas's 17th birthday, he did something that surprised everyone. He asked Theodore for Isabel's engagement ring. The old man understood immediately. "You're young. I know. I'm not asking her tomorrow. But someday, and I want her to have something from Mom." Theodore studied his grandson. This young man who'd been paralyzed by poison and hate, who'd learned to walk again through love and stubbornness, who'd chosen the girl who saved him not from obligation, but from genuine partnership. "Your mother would approve." Theodore opened the safe and retrieved the ring. Emerald-cut diamond, simple and elegant. "Just promise me you'll finish college first." "I promise." Lucas kept the ring hidden for months, carrying it in his pocket like a talisman. He and Emily were both 17 now, applying to colleges. Facing the terrifying reality of adulthood, they'd applied to several of the same schools, not explicitly coordinating, but not exactly accidentally either. One evening in late April, they sat in the kingdom of Lunaris as sunset painted the magnolias gold. Cherry blossoms had taken over this season, petals falling like snow. "I got into Duke," Emily said quietly. "Me too. Marine biology for me, pre-med for you. Different buildings, same campus. It's not like we're trying to be together," Emily said. Too quickly, Lucas smiled. "Aren't we, though?" Emily looked at him, really looked, saw the boy who'd once been trapped in a wheelchair, who'd taken his first steps to reach her, who'd learned to walk, partly because he couldn't stand being left behind. Saw the young man he'd become, kind despite having every reason to be bitter, strong despite years of weakness, hers despite never demanding she be his. Lucas Calloway. She used his full name. "Serious, are you in love with me?" "I've been in love with you since you gave me a drawing of a lopsided sunflower and told me they always look for light." He paused. "I didn't understand what the feeling was when I was 9. But I understand now. We're young. I know. People will say we're stupid, that we'll change. Probably. I'm going to study in other countries, spend summers on research vessels. You'll be doing clinical rotations and medical school. I know all this. So how do you know?" Emily's voice cracked. "How do you know this isn't just trauma bonding or childhood attachment or—" Lucas pulled out the ring, didn't get on one knee. They were sitting cross-legged in grass, just held it out. "I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm asking you to promise that someday, when we've both figured out who we are separately, we'll figure out who we are together, officially." Emily stared at the ring, then at Lucas, then started crying. "That's the dumbest not proposal I've ever heard. Is it working?" "Yes, you idiot, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. Too big, it spun loose. She'd need it resized, and kissed her for the first time. Tentative, brief, tasting of cherry blossoms and promises. From the terrace, Richard watched through the window and felt his throat tighten. Clara appeared beside him, took his hand. "They'll be okay," she whispered. "I know." Richard pulled her close. "We raised them to be okay." Theodore, in his greenhouse, saw the kiss and chuckled to himself. "Took them long enough," he told his orchids. They didn't disagree. Summer came. Emily and Lucas prepared for Duke. They'd both gotten substantial financial aid. Emily's full ride, Lucas's paid by Richard but supplemented by academic scholarships he'd earned himself. They were growing up, growing into themselves, growing together and apart in the way healthy love required. The kingdom of Lunaris remained, though they visited less frequently. The white stakes were weathered grey. The flowers wild now, but the magnolias stood eternal, witnesses to everything that had happened beneath their branches. On Emily's last night before leaving for college, she couldn't sleep. She went to the garden at midnight, found Lucas already there. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Too much changing too fast. They sat under the oldest magnolia, 305 years old now, trunks scarred with time and storms. Still standing, Emily leaned against Lucas's shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not giving up. That day I pushed your wheelchair when you took your first steps toward me. You could have stayed in the chair. Nobody would have blamed you, but you tried anyway. You taught me how, you taught me everything." Lucas wrapped his arm around her. "Finding those letters, solving the murder my mother tried to tell everyone about. That was all you. You saved everyone. We saved each other." "Yeah," Lucas agreed. "We did." They fell asleep there, under magnolias and stars, two kids who'd survived the worst and chosen each other anyway. Theodore found them at dawn, covered them with a blanket, and left them to their dreams. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in their lives, uncertain felt like possibility rather than threat. And that, Theodore thought as he watered his orchids, was everything. Duke University swallowed them both. 40,000 students, Gothic architecture, ambition thick enough to cut. Emily threw herself into marine biology, spending semesters abroad studying coral reefs in Australia, whale migration in Alaska. Lucas buried himself in pre-med, volunteering at Durham Regional, studying until his eyes blurred. They video-called across time zones, texted at odd hours, but distance, even chosen distance, wore on them their junior year. Emily came home for Thanksgiving break thinner, sun darkened, hair chopped short from practicality. She hugged everyone, kissed Lucas briefly, then disappeared into the cottage, claiming exhaustion. Clara found her crying in the lavender room an hour later. "Talk to me, baby." "I don't know if I can do this, Mama." Emily's voice was raw. "Love him and leave him every few months, be apart more than together. He's getting into Johns Hopkins, Columbia probably, and I'm looking at postgrad programs in Monterey, Tasmania, Norway. We're building separate lives." "That's not a bad thing." "It feels bad." Clara sat beside her daughter. "Now 19 and still so young. Your father, your birth father. We knew each other 3 months before we got married at 20, you born at 21. We were happy, but we were also kids playing house. When he died," Clara paused, "I wondered if we would have made it long-term, if the poverty and stress and growing up wouldn't have broken us anyway. You think Lucas and I won't last. I think you're doing it right. Building yourselves first, knowing who you are alone before you try being together." Clara touched Emily's shortened hair. "That ring on your finger, it's not a cage, it's a promise that you'll come back to each other when you're ready." Emily looked at Isabel's engagement ring. "Resized now, worn daily. What if we change too much? What if we become different people? Then you'll love the people you become. If it's real, it adapts." Christmas brought Lucas home from Duke looking gaunt. Stressed, second-guessing his medical school choices, he and Emily walked through the kingdom of Lunaris, overgrown now, wild, beautiful in its neglect. "I'm thinking of taking a gap year after graduation," Lucas said. "Before med school, maybe do Doctors Without Borders or something. Get out of the academic bubble." "That's a good idea." "You hate it." "I don't hate it." Emily kicked at fallen magnolia leaves. "I'm just tired of missing you." "I miss you too." "So why are we doing this?" Lucas stopped walking. "Because you were right 5 years ago when you said people would call us stupid, that we needed to figure ourselves out first. You were right. I don't want to be the guy who peaked at 17, whose best story is the girl who saved him when he was 9. I want to be more than that." "You already are." "Not yet. But I will be." He pulled her close. "And so will you. You're going to discover new species, document climate change, save ecosystems. You're going to be Dr. Emily Calloway Harrison, the scientist who couldn't keep a relationship alive past college, who loved someone enough to let them grow." Lucas tilted her face up. "We're not breaking up, we're just pausing, taking the pressure off. No more guilt about missed calls or visits. We focus on our work, our goals, and when we're both where we need to be, 30, 35, whenever, we come back and try for real." Emily wanted to argue, wanted to say love shouldn't be this hard, shouldn't require strategic distance. But she looked at Lucas, at the young man who'd learned to walk again, who'd chosen medicine because of what had been done to him, who'd grown from a paralyzed child to someone strong and purposeful, and realized he was right. "Okay," she whispered. "Pause, not end." They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like goodbye and see you later equally. The years scattered them. Emily finished Duke, started her PhD at Scripps Institute in California, published papers on ocean acidification, spent months at sea collecting data. Lucas finished pre-med, did his gap year in Haiti with Doctors Without Borders, got into Columbia Medical School, specialized in toxicology. A choice everyone understood. They called on birthdays, sent postcards from research stations and hospital rotations, kept tabs on each other through Richard and Clara. Theodore got older, frailer. At 78, he fell while watering his orchids, broke his hip, recovered but diminished, moving slower, sleeping more. "I'm ready," he told Richard one evening. "When it's time, I'm ready. Don't talk like that. I'm 81, son. I've had a good run. Saw you find love again. Saw those kids survive hell and thrive anyway. Saw justice done. That's more than most people get." He died peacefully in his sleep 2 months later. Emily flew back from the Galapagos for the funeral. Lucas came from New York, still in his medical school scrubs. Having left hospital rounds to catch the first flight, they stood together at Theodore's grave, older now, weathered, successful but tired. The kingdom of Lunaris had been completely reclaimed by nature. You couldn't see the stakes anymore, couldn't tell where it had been, but the magnolias remembered. "He was rooting for us," Emily said. "He told me once that we were proof love wins if you're patient." Lucas paused. "He also told me I was an idiot if I let you go." "You didn't let me go. We chose our paths." "I know, but Emily," Lucas turned to face her, "I think I'm done with my path being separate from yours." Emily's heart tripped. "Lucas, I'm finishing medical school in 6 months. Then residency, which I can do anywhere. You're defending your dissertation next year." He took her hands, the same way he had at 17, but steadier now. "What if anywhere is together? I have postdoc offers in Norway and Australia. Do they need toxicologists in Norway? You'd move to Norway. I'd move to the moon, if that's where you were working." Lucas smiled, the same smile from childhood, but weighted with decade of living. "I've spent 8 years becoming someone worthy of you. I think I'm there now, are you?" Emily thought about the girl who'd found a metal box in the mud, who'd solved a murder and saved a family. Thought about the woman she'd become. Dr. Emily Calloway Harrison, published scientist, ocean advocate, survivor. "Yeah," she said, "I'm there." Lucas got on one knee, properly this time, in grass beside Theodore's fresh grave. Magnolia petals falling like blessing. "Will you marry me for real this time?" "Yes." Emily pulled him up, kissed him hard. "Yes, yes, yes." They married 6 months later in the garden, under the magnolias that had witnessed everything. Small ceremony. Richard and Clara, Lucas's few close friends, Emily's research team, Father Tomas officiating. Emily wore a simple dress, carried sunflowers. Lucas wore his father's suit, cried through his vows. "You taught me to walk," he said. "In every sense, you taught me to live. You taught me to stay," Emily replied, even when running was easier. They honeymooned in the Galapagos, combined work and pleasure, studying marine iguanas by day, making love in a research station by night, imperfect and perfect simultaneously. Lucas started his residency in Oslo. Emily's postdoc was at the same university. They rented a small apartment overlooking the fjord, lived on coffee and ambition, fought about dishes and whose turn it was to grocery shop. Normal things, gloriously normal things. At 29, Emily gave birth to their daughter. They named her Isabel, after the grandmother who'd left clues for the living, who'd tried to save them all even from the grave. Baby Isabel had her grandmother's eyes and her mother's fierce curiosity. At 6 months, she already studied everything with intense focus. Reaching for seashells and medical journals with equal interest, they returned to Charleston when the baby was 1 to show her off, to visit graves, to remember. The mansion was the same. Richard and Clara had aged gracefully, garden maintained, cottage preserved. The kingdom of Lunaris was gone, reclaimed entirely by wilderness. But the magnolias stood, 317 years old now, survivors of storms and time and human drama. Emily and Lucas brought baby Isabel to the oldest tree, told her stories she couldn't understand yet about sunflowers and dragons, about poison and antidote, about falling and rising. "This is where your parents became family," Emily whispered to her daughter. "This is where everything started." Isabel grabbed a magnolia leaf, stuck it in her mouth, made a disgusted face. Emily and Lucas laughed, the sound carrying across the garden, across years, across all the pain that had brought them here. Richard watched from the terrace, Clara beside him. They made it, never doubted they would. Clara leaned into her husband. Love that survives childhood trauma, that's love that survives anything. In the cemetery, Theodore's grave was covered in fresh flowers. Someone left them weekly. Emily and Lucas, taking turns, making sure he knew he'd been right about everything. In prison, Marcus heard about the marriage through newspapers. He felt nothing. Sociopaths rarely did. Vivian, living under a new name in Montana, saw the announcement online and threw her laptop across the room, then cried for 3 hours, then moved on, because what else could she do? But in Charleston, under magnolias that had seen it all, 2 kids, now adults, now parents, held their daughter and each other and knew what their family had learned the hard way. Truth buried always surfaces. The innocent get vindicated, the guilty get caught. Love wins if you're patient, and sometimes the smallest voice asks the biggest questions that change everything. Baby Isabel cooed, reaching for the sunlight filtering through ancient leaves. Her parents smiled. And somewhere, maybe, a woman in white smiled too. Years folded into each other like waves. Emily and Lucas raised Isabel in Norway, then California, then finally back in Charleston when Richard's health began failing. Clara convinced them family should be together at the end. Richard made it to 76. Good years, happy years, redeemed years. He died in his sleep with Clara holding his hand, the same way he'd held Isabel's hand 23 years earlier while she slipped away. At the funeral, Lucas stood at his father's grave and spoke about second chances, about men who failed and fought to fix their failures. "My father taught me that mistakes don't define you. What you do after defines you." Emily squeezed his hand. Isabel, now 11, wildly intelligent, asking questions that made professors uncomfortable, leaned against her mother. She had her grandmother's eyes, her mother's determination, her father's compassion. The family inherited the mansion. Clara wanted to sell it. "Too many ghosts," she said, but Emily refused. "Not ghosts, Mama, witnesses. This house witnessed the worst of us and the best of us. We don't run from that." They converted it into something useful. the Isabel Calloway Foundation for Victims Advocacy, helping families navigating the criminal justice system, providing legal aid, supporting children affected by violence. Clara ran it with fierce dedication, finding purpose in preventing others from suffering what they'd survived. Lucas, now a full toxicology professor at Medical University of South Carolina, worked with the foundation to identify poisoning cases early. His research into neuromuscular toxins saved 17 lives in its first 3 years. Emily continued her marine biology research but focused locally: Charleston Harbor, salt marsh restoration, and climate change adaptation. She brought Isabel to fieldwork, teaching her daughter the same wonder Theodore had taught her. "Why do you study water?" Isabel asked one day, knee-deep in marsh mud. "Because water remembers everything," Emily said. "Every raindrop that fell on the day you were born is still in the ocean somewhere, circling. Water connects us all, past, present, future, like family. Exactly like family." The kingdom of Lunaris remained wild. But Emily and Lucas would take Isabel there, showing her where they'd played, where they'd made promises, where they'd survived. "Was Grandma Isabel really murdered?" the girl asked at 9. Lucas and Emily exchanged glances. They'd agreed to tell her the truth, all of it, when she was old enough. "Yes," Lucas said, "by bad people, by broken people who made evil choices. Did they get punished?" "Yes." "Good." Isabel was quiet for a moment. "Mom found the box that proved it right when she was my age. Little bit younger, she was 7. Isabel looked at her mother with something like awe. "You were brave." "I was scared. But sometimes you're brave and scared at the same time." As Isabel grew, 12, 13, 14, she showed signs of both her parents' gifts: scientific precision from Lucas, intuitive leaps from Emily. She wanted to study forensic pathology, to speak for victims who couldn't speak for themselves. "You know that's really hard, right?" Lucas warned. "You work with poison that killed people. Mom works with dying oceans. I can handle hard." She was right at 18. She got into Johns Hopkins. Early acceptance, full scholarship. The day the letter arrived, Emily and Lucas held each other and cried. "We raised a good one," Lucas whispered. "We raised a fighter." The night before, Isabel left for college. They held a ceremony in the kingdom of Lunaris. Still wild, still beautiful, Clara joined them, now 71, still sharp, still fierce. They planted a new magnolia sapling. "For the next generation," Emily said. "For Isabel, and whoever comes after. For all the kids who need saving," Clara added. "For the truth-tellers," Lucas finished. They stood in a circle. 4 generations if you counted the graves nearby. Isabel the First, Theodore Richard, and now Isabel the Second, ready to write her own story. That night, alone in her room one final time, young Isabel found a box on her bed. Inside, her grandmother's letters. Preserved and protected, a note from Emily read, "Your grandmother saved us before you were born. These letters are her voice. Learn from them. Speak for the silenced, the way she tried to. Love fiercely. Trust carefully and never ever stop asking questions." Isabel held the letters carefully, feeling the weight of legacy and responsibility. She thought about the great-grandmother she'd never met, the grandparents who'd raised her parents, the Uncle Theodore who existed only in stories. She thought about her parents, how they'd survived poison and paralysis and murder and separation, and still built lives of meaning and love. And she made a promise to herself. She would honor that survival. She would be worthy of the name Isabel. Years passed. Isabel became Dr. Isabel Calloway, forensic pathologist, expert witness in dozens of poisoning cases, voice for victims who couldn't speak. She married a fellow doctor, had twins, a boy and girl. Named Theodore and Clara, Emily and Lucas grew old together, grey hair, laugh lines, hands that found each other automatically. They'd survived everything: childhood trauma, forced separation, grief, distance, the ordinary difficulties of marriage and careers and raising a child. At 70, they returned to the kingdom of Lunaris one last time. The magnolia they'd planted for Isabel was 20 feet tall now. The original magnolias were ancient, gnarled, eternal. "We made it," Emily said, leaning against Lucas. "All the way." Lucas kissed her temple. "The ambassador of the ground and the prince of Lunaris. Those kids would be so proud of us. Those kids are us." They sat under the trees as sunset painted the garden gold and purple and rose. Emily thought about the girl who'd found a box in the mud, who'd solved a murder and saved a family. Lucas thought about the boy who'd learned to walk again because love demanded it. "If you could go back," Lucas asked, "and tell them anything, those kids we were, what would you say?" Emily thought for a long time. "I'd say, hold on. It gets worse before it gets better. You'll lose things you love. You'll be separated and scared. But hold on, because what's waiting on the other side is worth every moment of pain." "I'd tell them they're stronger than they know," Lucas added, "and that the girl with the sunflower drawing is the best thing that ever happens to them." "That's sappy. It's true." They fell asleep there, under ancient magnolias, the same way they'd slept as teenagers. Isabel found them at dusk, covered them with a blanket, and left them to their dreams. The last magnolia petal of the season fell. And in that moment, everything that had happened, the poison and the paralysis, the murder and the mystery, the love and the loss and the triumph, all of it crystallized into a single truth. Some families are born, others are forged in fire, and the strongest families are the ones who refuse to break, who keep choosing each other, who plant trees for children. They'll never meet because they believe in futures they'll never see. The Calloway Harrison family was one of those, built on ashes, grown toward light, rooted in love too stubborn to die. And in the soil where Emily had once dug up a box of letters, new seeds were germinating, waiting for the next curious child, the next truth-teller, the next survivor who would refuse to let darkness win, because that's what families do. They pass the torch, they tell the stories, they plant the trees. And they survive. If this story touched you, what truth have you been afraid to uncover, and what would you do if you finally found it? Sometimes the smallest hands solve the biggest mysteries. Who in your life has been your unexpected hero? In the spaces between our tragedies and triumphs, in the gardens we tend and the secrets we unearth, we discover what it truly means to be family, not through blood alone, but through the courageous choice to love, to forgive, and to fight for each other when the world says it would be easier to walk away.